Hey gang, welcome back to It's a Creative Life. My name's Pete, and today I want to talk about how to make fake trees for the stage. And I want to dispel this myth. A lot of people think that when they're making trees for the stage, they got to try to make them look as realistic as possible, and you don't. Depending on the show that you're doing, you can make trees that look not real, but they look fantastic, they look whimsical, they look magical. So today we're going to explore two different ways to make really magical, fantastical, whimsical looking trees. And I want to dispel this rumor too. You don't always have to make a leaf canopy that looks like real leaves. They can be made to look like other things. So today we're going to talk about how to make these really cool trees, two different ways, and a really cool leaf canopy that joins the two together. Let's get into it. Okay, so these sock trees are hollow. This is just a cotton fabric. It's a lot like t-shirt fabric, and it's just sewn into a tube. We happen to be able to buy this fabric tube, but you could just basically buy the fabric in a yard width or 48 inches wide and sew it into a tube. Just take a long runner of it, fold it over, and sew it. You could do that too. And then it's stretchable. It's really stretchy stuff. So we then put a piece of plywood that looks like an organic shape, something that might look like a tree trunk, and it's just made out of plywood. And then this is hollow, and it follows that same thing until all the way up at the top we've got another shape that is also cut out of plywood that is just suspended. And you could suspend this from a pipe, you could suspend this from a catwalk, anywhere. And that's all there is to it. These are great, and they last for a long time. As a matter of fact, I've had these trees for probably 20 years. And I pull them out every now and again just because they're a fast, really effective tree trunk, and it's just super easy. They pack so small. You can put these away into a room somewhere, and they live forever. And then you pull them out when you need them, and you've got a tree. It's just because they're like a sock. It's just fabric. There's nothing here. There's nothing in this, So perfect. It's perfect for the theater. Great to have something that stores away, and great to have something that is a perfect standby for just a perfect tree trunk when you need it. And you've probably noticed these things are paintable too. You can see that I've had spatter on the bottom of these things. And so we just started with a white fabric. You could start with a different color fabric, but it's got to be stretchy. I think cotton is the best. And you're looking for something that is basically like a t-shirt material or a sock material. So sock trees, they look like this. Okay, the second kind of tree that we're going to learn about are corrugated plastic tube trees. And these really do make very interesting, gnarly, magical looking trees. And they're just really stage worthy, and they're made out of this stuff. This is 4-inch diameter drainage tile. And you can find this usually at your local home store. It's usually back in the lot. It comes in lengths of like 150 feet. And you get a few of these things and you start unrolling them. You got to roll them out, and then you start measuring them. So what we did is we just put a tape measure down on the aisle, and we measured the lengths that we needed. And then you put a 2x4 and bolt it just into the tube itself. That way you have something you can anchor it to. We are anchoring it to our catwalks, but you can anchor it to a pipe or a batten. But it looks like this. So we've got this tied off to the top. We've got 6 of these dropped down from our catwalk, and then we just start twisting them together. This is what really starts making it look like a tree. Basically, you're bundling these things together. We just started with gaffer's tape, but we replaced that with wire after we knew what shape we wanted. It's also important to have a rigid post that is anchored to your stage that you can tie this tube off to. This tube is actually pretty floppy by itself, and so, just something about 10 feet high that you can tie this thing off to really helps make it rigid. Okay, so making those corrugated tube trees did take a little bit of planning, so let me show you what I've got here. Kind of old school. I just found a ladder, and then I made practice, basically mock-ups of what I wanted these tube trees to look like. So this is my first one. And by the way, this actually is to scale, in half-inch scale. From here to here is 25 feet, and that's the distance from the floor to my catwalk. And then this is my, I made a cheesecloth valance. This is just like the valance that's in our theater. And so this actually worked out. So this is what the audience can see right here. This one kind of came apart. This is just PEX tubing. This is kind of what your plumber would use in your house these days, but this is 1/4-inch PEX. And these are the trees that I actually ended up using. This is stage right, sorry, this is stage left, and this is stage right. And I numbered each tube. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tubes that came down from each side. And then this is how we twisted them. Now, you probably don't want that corrugation to be visible to the audience, at least we didn't, so we started making a bark texture that was going to mask the corrugation. The bark texture that we're using is spray foam. With some creative tube sculpting, we were actually able to make the roots look like they were just coming out of the stage, and then we sprayed those with foam too, until we had the entire tree covered in what was looking like bark texture. But we're not done yet, because after this, we're going to cover this entire tree with muslin. Here you can see what the tree looks like once it's covered with muslin. Notice how the bark texture comes right through it. Muslin is a fabric that we use in the theater an awful lot. It's cotton and it's durable, but truth be told, on these trees, we even used bed sheets and other fabrics that we could get for free. We found that the best way to adhere the muslin to the tubes was just using 3M spray adhesive. And then we sized the whole thing up by painting it all white. But notice how the corrugations are gone. Now everything looks like bark. For our particular trees, we wanted them to be diachromatic, and so all it took was for us to take a brown paint and spray the crevices. That's really what makes these trunks come to life. These trees here are a little bit more involved. They take a little bit more effort, but the end product is so worth it. So we wanted kind of a smooth, wintry look to these trees. We wanted them to basically have sort of a frosty look to them. But you wouldn't have to do that. You could, if you chose to, you wouldn't have to cover these things with muslin. You could just make the bark out of spray foam and just do a lot of it. And then you'd have a much more realistic tree. For us, that wasn't really the vibe. So we wanted muslin on these things. We wanted a neat, smooth kind of texture. But there's options. You can do this to make them look a little bit more realistic too. Either way, you get this kind of cool, interesting, twisty, gnarly looking tree that is perfect for the stage.
Hey! You should subscribe to the channel now. Do it. Do it now.
Okay, so now we got two different kinds of trunks, but we can use a single leaf canopy technique to tie the whole thing together. And this is inspired by an art installation by the artist Tom Price. We were really inspired by how he made leaves with basically circles and tubes, so we thought we would try our hand at the same thing. Here we have a bunch of PVC pieces that are cut up into 1 inch to 1.5 inch lengths, and then we just zip tied them together. This was a better option for us than trying to glue these pieces together because it allowed us to take them apart and reconfigure the shapes if we needed to. And it also allowed us to actually add to the canopy while they were suspended, which became very easy with zip ties. By the way, if you're going to do this, I highly recommend getting one of these zip tie tighteners and cutters. When you're doing this, pay attention to the spaces. You don't want this to get too dense. You want it to be airy and light, kind of like a branch full of leaves would be. We made just a bunch of these, and before we put them up, we just had to store these in all the hallways. And then up they went. You could attach these to a batten and fly them up that way, or you can dead hang them. There's all kinds of options. And then, like I said, you can actually add circles while the canopy is up and in place. So then you can actually have things that look like leaves encircling the trunks and the branches of the trees, and this really helps sell the leaf canopy. If you wanted to, you could paint these circles green to be more like leaves.
But we decided just to leave them white because the lighting designer could have an awful lot of fun changing the colors of the leaves just with the lights being used.
Hey, you guys, I keep telling you it's a creative life, because it is! If you guys liked this, or if you like any of the other videos on the channel, please consider subscribing. Until next time, we'll see you in the next one. So long.